This is Sawyer Robertson, and you're listening to the Bearcast on SicEm365.com.
Welcome into the Bearcast on SicEm365.com. I'm your host, Grayson Grundhoefer. Today, I'm here with Colt Barber, as usual, and we are going to talk Baylor versus Arizona State coming up on Saturday. This is the Bears conference opener, as well as the Sun Devils. A big matchup, another big night game for the Bears and for Dave Aranda. Another opportunity for them to get back on track with these home games, which is something I know we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But Colt, just in general, going through this week and getting ready for this game, I mean, it just feels so interesting this year because it's already the third kind of big game for Baylor at the beginning of the year. And that typically isn't kind of how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good and bad thing. I think it's a bad thing from the standpoint that you're probably a little bit more beat up than some of these other teams. You've spent more energy and emotion on a couple of big games. But the good thing for Baylor is that they played Samford last week, and we saw that show up. I think we saw that lack of focus show up in that particular game. The more I looked at that game, I think that was truly just we just went through went through the mill playing Auburn and SMU, the emotional time spent. You come out of fall camp and don't really have that chance to catch your breath and kind of get into the flow of things. You just go out and play. But this is another chance for Baylor to get up. And not that Arizona State didn't have one against Mississippi State. Obviously, they lost that game, one that not a lot of people expected them to lose just on paper. So I'm curious how both teams approach this game, because even Arizona State, they played a Texas State team that took them to the ropes last year. They battled Arizona State last year, so they weren't going into that game mentally unprepared. So they did play it for that game that was at home against Texas State. But this is a fascinating kind of counter. There's two different styles of teams that are going at it this week, and I'm anxious to see how Baylor responds, and I'm curious to see what Arizona State does, because they've struggled in some areas that I don't know if a lot of people expected them to struggle.
Absolutely. So looking at Baylor, as far as the home record, we have to go back to this again, Colt. I hate bringing it up, but it's something that is just truly the biggest storyline to me coming into this game. Baylor is 4-11 at home against Power 4 teams since the start of the 2022 season. They have a 1-8 record in what I would classify as big games at home. It has not been good. And if you want to dive deeper, if you want to look into, can you win a Big 12 championship if this continues to be the production at home? The answer is emphatically no. The last 5 Big 12 champions have combined to go 28-3 at home. I mean, you cannot lose home games. And that's not just conference play. That's non-conference as well. I mean, these teams, if you win the Big 12, you likely aren't losing at home. Baylor hasn't proven that they can win at home. And I know you had a post on SicEm 365 Premium kind of going through these games. And I understand you can make excuses for, the 2023 season was bad and this and that, but there were still games for the taking in a lot of these matchups. Yeah. I mean, 2022 against TCU, 2023 against Utah, a couple other of those 2023 games they were right in the mix for, against Houston, against West Virginia. And then, of course, this year, starting off with the Auburn game, it's been really problematic. And it's something that it's hard for me to just not take into account for this game, because it's been very much a trend.
Yeah, and it affects the fan base too, and showing up for these games and spending the energy to go to those games and provide a home field advantage. When you're not consistently winning, it becomes an issue at home, and it's more of an apathetic. It's kind of like, what are we going to get this week? Like, are we going to, should I go and spend all this energy and just for another loss? And you referenced my post, and I think the point behind that post was that, yes, 2023 was bad. You go to 2022, back to that season, and the teams that they lost to at home. I mean, you talk about TCU was a really good team that they shouldn't have lost that game. The game, there's another game, Kansas State, they got blown out by. Kansas State was a good team, but that started the trend that season of, which is like, man, they can't get out of their own way at home. They can't, and they face some good teams, but they're right there with a lot of them. Even in 2024, you talk about the BYU game getting off to a slow start and not finishing that one. But yeah, this team has to get back right. They did win a big one last year against TCU, which is ultimately a team that won 9 games, even though that might kind of be a hollow 9 games. It was a rivalry game, and they go in and win it. But this is a game that, if Dave Aranda has stabilized this program, I think that you have to win. You're favored in it. Arizona State's just not going to ultimately outclass you talent-wise. I think you saw some of that in the Auburn game. Just obviously, we've discussed that so much, but this is not a game that's going to be like that. This is an evenly matched game in terms of overall talent. Both teams have advantages in this game in different areas. You have to be prepared to play this game. And if you're not prepared to play this game, it's another, mark on the coaching staff in my mind. Like, you have to come out and be ready to play this game. Don't let the moment be too big, but also treat it as a big spot, because if you don't win this game, like, it sets up the rest of the season with lower expectations, and you don't want that only 4 games into the season.
Real quick, Sawyer Robertson has something to remind you about.
Want the latest information about your favorite team? Try out SIGM 365 premium content the next 3 months for just $5 by clicking the link below.
And now back to the Bearcast. And it's very much a slingshot game, because if you win this game and then you turn around and play Oklahoma State, who is reeling right now, and Kansas State at home, who's also reeling, it feels very much like if you win this game, you should be 5-1 going into that TCU game. Should be. Now, I mean, obviously many things can happen, but that's how this schedule is kind of shaped up to start the year. And it's not that it's flipped really, because I still think they played some really good teams at the beginning of the year. But I know coming into the season, I think a lot of people thought Oklahoma State would be a trap game. I think a lot of people thought Kansas State was going to be good this year. I think there are some changes that have occurred, but in general, through the first 4 games, I think a lot of it is still very similar. I still think Arizona State is a Big 12 title contender. I still think Auburn's really good. I think TCU is going to be problematic as well on the road. So still a lot to look forward to, but this is a big one that feels like you win this one and you can really gain momentum going into kind of the middle of your schedule and then the end of the schedule, which is pretty favorable for the Bears. And it also is kind of one of those games where just looking back on it, if you remember the 2022 season, they got off to an okay start, had a little bit of a lull, then got hot in the middle of their schedule, and then it just tailed off at the end. This feels like one, because of the schedule, it won't tail off, but it requires you winning a game like this.
Yeah, I mean, you beat Arizona State, and then you look at the toughest games on the rest of the schedule, and Arizona State's one of the tougher ones. So you win this game, and it raises the bar, kind of like, okay, we know we can perform at this level. Like, they kind of did that with SMU, though we still don't really know about SMU yet. But this is just another notch. It's like the confidence level. Not that it changes anything about your team, but you just know more about your team. So you beat Arizona State, and then you look at the Kansas State game a little bit differently. You look at the TCU game a little bit differently. You look at the Utah game a little bit differently. So you just go through the schedule like, we did it against Arizona State, who is comparable to X, Y, and Z. So now you're elevated in the confidence that you go in those games. But yeah, I'm just, you don't want to put too much stock in one game, win or lose, because the variables change throughout the season. But winning this game sets them up because of the talent that Arizona State has. They have a really good quarterback who goes and makes plays with his feet. You go and win this game, and you just feel much better about the rest of the season and the ceiling for this team. And to be frank, I picked this team to go 9-3 this year, and I said they're going to split against Auburn and Arizona State, and that's going to ultimately decide 9-3 or something different. If they drop this game, you very well say 8-4, and it's not a terrible season, but you still have the outlook of saying, hey, let's get to 8-4, and that's your ceiling. I don't know if it's the ceiling, but you're going to have to go 6-2 to get there. And those games against Utah, TCU, I mean, potentially Houston, we don't know. I don't know if we know enough about them yet, but it just sets up more like 2024, where you have to finish really strong to even be in consideration.
And I think that would be disappointing. I mean, just to be frank, like, you went 8-4 last year. So why are you having the exact same schedule? I know you had to play Auburn in the non-conference, but we'll see. I mean, we don't know that much about Auburn yet either. Like, we're going to find out really quick. They play Oklahoma this weekend, so we'll know some things. But
they have a stretch coming up that'll be a challenge. And I think Oklahoma's pretty good. And so I don't know if that's an indictment if they lose that game. Probably how they play is going to tell us a lot. But if Auburn can play to their potential, it's a whole nother podcast, but if they play to their potential, I think they're better than Oklahoma, but playing at Oklahoma is a challenge. And Oklahoma is a pretty good offense. It's just, how well does Auburn's defense hold up? That's a whole nother podcast, though.
Yeah, it is. I think it's just more so saying that 8-4 would not be. I mean, it's acceptable, but I also don't think that there's anything exciting about going 8-4.
No,
with the schedule in front of them. I mean,
Yeah, it stabilizes the program. Baylor hasn't had back-to-back 8-win seasons since 2014, 2015. That's the thing that you take out of that. And truly, you don't know until you know what those 4 losses were. Like if you lose to a Utah team an Auburn team that goes 9-3 in the SEC, whatever they do, and then you look at Arizona State who might bounce back, and you lose that game. Like 8-4 can come in a lot of different ways. We just don't know what that way is at the end of the year until the end of the year, where all the things shake out. But 8-4 on the surface, disappointing. I mean, like that I don't, with everything you had coming back, you would expect more than that.
Absolutely. All right. So let's dive into this Arizona State team really quick and kind of go through what they have, where their problems are. I think we got to start with Sam Leavitt. Coming into this season, the quarterback was thought to be the best quarterback in the Big 12. I think that a lot of people are maybe torn on who else was in that conversation. Sawyer Robertson got a lot of buzz as well, but in general, great quarterback conference, and Sam Leavitt was the guy coming into the season that most people were talking about. And you look at this year, and it's kind of been a step back a little bit for him. We know he's a really good runner. He's got 157 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. But it's been in the passing game where he just has struggled a little bit this year. He's gotten off to a bit of a slow start. He's only completing 58% of his passes, 527 yards, 3 interceptions. It's been a mixed bag. He didn't play well in the game that they lost to Mississippi State. He played okay against Northern Arizona. I think his best performance was probably against Texas State this past weekend, so maybe some things are aligning for him. But it has been a little bit of a surprise as to not how bad he's played, but just that he hasn't risen to another level this season. It just doesn't seem like he's taken that step forward.
Yeah, and I think you start off by looking at his ability to throw the ball deep right now. Plays or pass attempts over 10 yards, completing 27% of his passes. Compared that to last year, on plays 20 plus yards alone, he completed 32% of his passes. So, and then 10 to 19, 54% of the passes. Everything else behind that, if it's 0 to 9 yards or behind the line of scrimmage, great. No issues. And I don't know if that's a result of receivers just not being open, his inaccuracy, because we know how good Jordan Tyson is, and we know they've had struggles finding another number 2 receiver. I think that's where it all goes to, is like, how do you complete the passes downfield? Is that on Sam? Is that just on guys not getting open? So 27%. And if you look at deep shots only at 20 yards or more, he's completing 16.7% of his 12 attempts. And that's just like, I mean, you expect at least 30% from a guy like that of taking deep shots. And I think teams probably how they're playing him and stuff, but he just hasn't been as good. And you're waiting on him to turn that back on. You don't want it to be against Baylor if you're a Baylor fan, but Jordan Tyson is good. They're supposed to get the transfer potentially back from Fresno State at receiver this week, and maybe that helps him. They just don't have another guy out there making plays on the outside, and that's creating issues, I would say, in their entire offense.
Yeah, they really don't. Specifically on Sam Leavitt, we're going to talk about the run game in a second and talk about kind of how important it is for Baylor to be able to control that. And one of the reasons why it's going to be so important that they just don't hemorrhage yards is because when you look at Sam Leavitt's profile, something that has really stood out to me watching the games, and then when I went and looked at PFF, it became even more apparent. So he's got 38 dropbacks in play action situations, and he's got 255 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. He's completing nearly 67% of his passes. I mean, he's been awesome in play action situations. A lot of that is because they have ran the ball exceptionally well to start this season. And so teams are having to kind of bite on those play action fakes, and he has been so good in those situations. But then you look at all other throws. So we're just talking standard passing throws. This also includes screens, so kind of easy throws as well. He's only totaled 272 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and he's only completing 51% of his passes. That really stood out to me, and that's something that I'm sure Baylor's focused on. That's also something that I'm sure Arizona State is focused on as well, as to how can they get Baylor to crowd the box? How can they get Baylor to bite on these play action fakes? And a lot of that's just going to come down to who's going to win in the trenches. And so far this year, Baylor has not won in the trenches on the defensive line. This is the healthiest probably they will be all year coming up, depending on the health status of DK Kalu. But Jackie Marshall should be very close to 100% based on everything that's been said
as close
about
as
him.
he's going to be.
Right, all year. So It's going to be interesting, but that kind of combination right there is going to be a huge one that's probably going to dictate how this game goes.
Yeah, and they're going to have to utilize that. And I went back and was looking at the Samford game and even the SMU game, which Jackie only played minimal snaps in that game. But let me ask you this. Going into the season, who are the two defensive linemen for Baylor that you say they're your two best interior linemen, excluding outside linebackers, but who are your best two, most consistent, most productive coming back for this year? Who would you say?
It's Jackie Marshall and Cooper Lance.
Okay. Against Samford in the first half, and I assume this tailed off, they played 3 snaps together on the field. You go back to the Auburn game, Jackie only played 8 snaps.
Yeah.
You go to the SMU game. I want to see those guys play together. I want to see them on the field, and I understand they're having to rotate, but in a game like this, you need those guys on the field together, and you need DK to come back. Like, you need that group to be solid, and they haven't had it. And like, it's unfortunate. I just want to see if that's part of this. If this is truly part of this, if they can get on the field together, I want to see that group play together. And if they're not, that's gonna. I think there are ways around it. But this is the game that you need them, and hopefully DK's healthy, because I think that gives them the best, obviously the most depth, but I think that gives the best chance for them to hold up at the line of scrimmage and not have to play peso, not have to play 1-4 in situations that you don't necessarily want to. If they can get in 3rd and long and you're playing that, that's great, fine, go with it. You don't want to have to play that early downs.
No, they're not going to be able to get away with that against Arizona State. But I do think that. You bring up a good point. It's not just really about Cooper Lance and Jackie Marshall either. It's the fact that, now your backup is Devontae Tizino, who you feel great about. Your other backups are, whoever they're playing at nose tackle, whether it's Adonis or DK. It just gives you more depth of guys that you feel confident about.
You can 5 guys finally. Yeah.
Right. And then whatever you get from Samu is just a cherry on top type thing. And so, it's going to be interesting. I don't think they're going to be able to run peso the whole game. I think they'll run into some problems, but I also think they're probably going to have to run it at times, just still given, however limited Jackie might be, however limited they are with their nose tackles. It's going to be intriguing. I think Amarian Winston has held up pretty well, but you also don't want him and Matthew Fobbs-White both on the field at the same time against a run-heavy team.
Trying to set edges.
Snaps. Yeah. That's just a recipe for not very much success. And the reason for that is because Arizona State can flat out run the football. I mean, they are pounding people up front. It's been really interesting to watch. Their worst rushing output so far this year was against Mississippi State, and they still averaged nearly 5 yards per carry. They averaged 4.9 yards per carry. And really, if you went and watched that game, the only reason Arizona State lost that one was because they started off so slow. By the second half, they started running the football. They started taking the ball out of Sam Levitt's hands and giving it to their running backs, and they just were moving Mississippi State consistently. This is one of the best rushing offenses Baylor's going to face all year. Auburn, Utah, Arizona State. I think those are the 3 that Baylor really is going to have to focus on in the run game, to go along with the fact that they have Sam Levitt, a really good rushing quarterback. The guys that they've really kind of focused on in this rushing attack. And this guy is very scary to me. I think as we watch this game, he might be a guy that jumps off the screen to a lot of Baylor fans, but Raleek Brown is an electric running back, a superb talent, a guy that they've finally gotten going the last couple weeks. He is a fun watch, a guy who is very scary for any defense because he does have that home run hitting speed. And then they've been using Kanye Udo, their transfer edition, who's more of a power back for this offense. They also have Kyson Brown, who I don't believe played in their last game. So I'm curious if he's going to be back. Yeah. But either way, they have 2 really good running backs. They're averaging 6.4 yards per carry and have posted nearly 700 yards rushing through 3 games.
Yeah. I mean, that's their bread and butter. And in a lot of ways and a lot of reasons, this Arizona State team reminds me a lot of Baylor in 2022. And it might be because of the passing game, but you think about Baylor early in 2022, guys got hurt at running back, but they were still able to run the ball because they had a good offensive line. And Baylor just didn't have any playmakers at receiver to speak of that season. And this Arizona State team reminds me so much of that. And not that that's how their season is ultimately going to go, but their running game is good. Baylor's running game in 2022, until people realize we don't really have the cover body on the outside. That running game was really good. We saw it again. I mean, you go back to the TCU game when Baylor had them on the ropes. They were running the ball. They were throwing the ball. They were doing everything they could to win that game, but it was all hinged on the run game. I mean, remember that the clips of the offensive linemen like doing the spin move and getting those counters going. Like they were able to do that stuff with that offensive line. Raleek Brown, Udo are very good. I mean, they're physical. The kid from Army, Udo from Army, like he's just tough and physical, and you would expect that from a triple option guy. I don't know what Baylor's game plan is going to be in this defensively. I don't treat this like Auburn. I don't see it like I know Tyson's really good. Jordan Tyson's really good, but it doesn't scare you the same way where you have two guys lined up on the opposite side of the field that can go take the top off or take one, a screen for 50. I don't see that from Arizona State. Like, yeah, you're worried about their tight ends and their playmaking ability, but that's kind of like, hey, that's an extension of their running game in a lot of ways. Now, if you don't account for them, they can go and score. I just don't know how Dave Aranda views it. I don't know what he sees, because if they go out and play that too high safety look in this game, I don't know if that's the right decision. And I know you want to prevent the big play, but I think you can prevent the big play without doing that. From Fresno State comes back, he shows in the first quarter that he's electric and he's going to go make plays for them in the pass game as well. Well, then you might have to shift your game plan. But until this point, they don't have that. So I'm really anxious to see Dave Aranda's approach for this game defensively.
I mean, I agree with you, but I also think there's just a huge sample size of the fact that, Baylor's they run two high safeties so heavily. They've been doing it since last year. I mean, it's just how they've run their defense. And so I don't know if that changes. I think it probably should, because I agree with you. You need to make these other guys have to beat you over the top. And I think Auburn was a different animal, not just because of Coleman and Singleton, but it's also like you're worried about Fields. You're worried about Simmons. Like they
rotated guys.
A ton of guys who are super talented. So it's just a little bit different in that regard. I don't know that they have anyone as good as Jordan Tyson, though. I mean, as much as I like Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, I mean, this guy's
he's
so productive. I mean, he is extremely good. And I think that gives us a chance here to shift to those playmakers, because you did a good job mentioning the fact that who else do they got? I mean, you look at their kind of totals.
I like their tight ends fine. They don't scare me.
Good.
They don't scare me the way that Trigg would scare me if he was on the, like, they're just different. They're physical run blocking guys who can go make plays in the passing game.
Shimon Mateer is pretty good. I think he can give you a little bit of those big plays. He's got 7 receptions on the season, and he's been their second best weapon so far this year. But the crazy part is Jordan Tyson has 36 targets, 24 receptions through 3 games. He has been just the absolute focus of this offense. And you look at their next options, it's Mateer, their tight end, with 7 receptions. And then they have 2 running backs, Raleek Brown and Kyson Brown, who both have 6 receptions. No receivers on that list. This is who they've been targeting. This is who they've been throwing the football to a lot. And so it just makes you think, okay, what can Baylor do to slow this guy down? And I would tell you that there's really not a whole lot that they can do. So here's an interesting stat on Jordan Tyson. So he's posted at least 100 yards or a touchdown in 11 straight games. During that stretch, he has 6 100-yard games, 5 games with 8 or more receptions, 4 games with 2 or more touchdowns, and 0 games with less than 5 receptions. Yeah. The guy has just been dominant. 11 games. I mean, that's like a full season sample size. I mean, he has just been completely dominant. They move him all over the field. I think he's right around like 35, 40% in the slot, and then 60, 65% out wide. So they're going to move him around, be creative with him. I really like the way they utilize him. And it allows them to, because they move him around so much, it's really hard to say, okay, we're going to take this guy away, because you got a cornerback covering him on one play. You got a safety guarding him on another play. You're running zone on another play, and he's finding the openings there. It just makes him really challenging. It makes him such a complete weapon for them. I'd love to say, oh, yeah, you just take him away and then you can win this game. But that's much easier said than done with how they utilize him.
Yeah, he's going to move around, and they have to move him around. And that's why I'm really curious about the Fresno transfer. And sorry, I keep referencing in that way. You could probably pull his name up. I can't remember his name right now. But he was productive. They don't have any guys they take deep shots to right now other than Tyson. So it's like, if your ultimate goal is to prevent the explosive play, which Arizona State has not done a good job of this year of creating explosive plays because of basically the scheme that they're running, and they don't have a secondary guy that can go take the top of the defense, you can really protect yourself just alignment wise. And maybe that's the reason Dave Aranda says we're just going to stick in 2 high safeties and hope our linebackers can tackle better than they did against Auburn. I think you have to really play contain. But yeah, I mean, Tyson's going to get his. I think that you expect him to get his in whatever form and fashion that it is. It's where do you limit the rest of them? You can't let him beat you deep. You can't let him break for 70 yards. I don't even know statistically wise how often does he go for a big explosive play like that, just based on how teams play him. But you can't allow that to beat you. So schematically, what are you doing? Is it we're just going to play you straight up with Tevin Williams and give you a safety over the top, or LeVar, whatever side of the field he's on? Obviously, you might have to, if he's lining up in the slot, are you playing a nickel corner? Are you bringing in a third corner to be out there with him? We've never seen them just shadow a receiver. I don't expect that to happen. So I'm just, this is too obvious of a thing for Dave Aranda to not focus on, knowing that I have to dedicate a lot to stopping the run in this game. So what approach does he take? I'm fascinated by this because he can't go into this game, in my mind, and not have an abnormal, a different, something unique for this particular matchup. And Dave Aranda, if you go back through his career in games where he says, hey, I want to take this away, then he does it pretty well. He does a decent job of it. I don't know in this instance, is it we just want to shut down the run and Jordan Tyson beats us with 10 catches for 150 yards, so we just live with it? I don't know what he does. And I'm really fascinated about this chess match because right now you might just trust that your defense is more capable of stacking the box, and Sam Levitt might not have his best game because through 3 games, he hasn't been that efficient throwing the football, and maybe that's a risk you take.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to if they can limit the run game just enough. I mean, that's really the key. You just enough to where you're forcing at least a few of these 3rd and longs. You're not caught in these 3rd and 2 play action situations where Arizona State's going to go for it anyways. You get caught in those situations enough, and you're going to give up a lot of points. Tyson is really good. And you kind of posed the question, does he win deep? He does win deep, but the really his bread and butter, honestly, is the intermediate, that 10 to 20 yard range. Yeah. He is just so effective, and it kills you because those are big chunk plays, and then he's good after the catch as well. He sits behind the linebackers very often and makes catches the ball there. Short throws, also obviously they're going to utilize him there. I mean, he's just a very complete receiver, and that's why I do believe it's going to be hard to completely take him away. I think you are right. I think you're gonna have to live with some of this. Now, you don't want to hemorrhage 150 yards and 2 touchdowns to him, but if you're living with 8 catches for 100 yards and a score, that might be just kind of what you're having to live with, to be honest, in this game. And he's their true weapon. Everyone else in the pass game is kind of just okay, not really proven. You mentioned Malik McLean. So he actually transferred from Florida State and then to Penn State.
So this one's Jalen Moss. He's played 2 snaps this year. He transferred from Fresno, but McLean's the other one. He's their their secondary guy right now, and he doesn't have hasn't had a lot of targets at all.
No, he hasn't been very good. So we'll see if they get Moss back for this one. That could help them a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch Baylor try to deal with this offense. I will say coming into the year, Arizona State was, in my eyes, one of the top 3 offensive lines in the conference. I really haven't seen any reason to change that. They're very big and physical up front. They're not as athletic as Auburn, but they're big, strong, physical, and they got a very cohesive unit with multiple guys coming back this year. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, they're going to try to maul Baylor up front for better terms. That's what they're going to try to do. That's what they want to do. Bully Baylor up front, and then take their shots when they're available. The 2 guys that I'm really highlighting on their offensive side besides Levitt are Tyson and then Raleek Brown, their running back, because Baylor's had so many problems with their gap integrity at the linebacker position. If you miss one on Raleek Brown, it's a touchdown. Like it just is. That's how explosive and how fast.
And that could be a reason that they stay in the 2 high safety looks and say, hey, look, like if we're going to risk, maybe they do some run blitzing, they try to fill gaps manually rather than automatically, where it's like we're not reacting, we're just going to be proactive and do this. You got to live with safeties deep. One thing I point about the offensive line, and this is when you have a dual threat quarterback, Sawyer's not doing this, so it doesn't matter. But when you have a dual threat quarterback like Sam Levitt, his average time to throw right now is 3.09 seconds. So this isn't about pass protection. This isn't like, hey, I'm just going to hold up and he has 3 seconds to throw. Like if you're giving him 3 seconds just to sit in the pocket, any quarterback's probably going to light you up pretty good. He's just making plays. Like he will go, and I watched the Texas State game. He just makes some plays where he's running around the backfield for 5 or 6 seconds, avoiding guys. And that's where he's going to be the most dangerous. So Baylor has to be disciplined in their pass rush. I think their offensive line is good, but just as you have a dual threat quarterback, he's going to make them look even better at times. And Baylor has to do a good job of rushing the passer with integrity, because if you get out of your lane, somebody gets upfield, he's going to step around and run or run to throw. And he's really good at it. I mean, I don't know how many games in his career that he's had negative rushing yards, but it's not very, very often. This is still, in my mind, different than Jackson Arnold, who has tons of design runs. He's going to scramble and make you pay throwing the football and also running it and gaining yards on scrambles. Not a lot of design stuff. So more like Kevin Jennings in that way. But Baylor has to rush. If you can rush and get some pressure, maybe push the offensive line back a little bit, but keep him contained, that might be the best way to approach this game. Because if you start getting upfield on him often, he's going to kill you. I mean, that's game over in my mind if you do that and you don't have discipline. So I expect the defensive line to be schooled in that area, but the edges, Matthew Fobbs-White, the linebackers who are blitzing, break down, make him make a decision before you go dive at his feet, because you're not going to tackle him in a one-on-one situation most of the time if he can see you.
Right, and he only has 1 negative yard rushing game, and he only had 4 attempts in that game. But in his last 5 games, which is against pretty good competition when you talk about the Big 12 championship, the New Year's Six Bowl against Texas, and then the start of this year, he's got 6 rushing touchdowns during that stretch. So, I mean, he is very dangerous with his feet and can make a lot of plays. All right, let's move over to the defensive side for Arizona State. They've been really good also, but I would say that it's very clear where their strengths and their weaknesses are. They're very strong up front. They are deep up front too. I mean, they got a bevy of pass rushers led by Clayton Smith, who's going to be the guy to keep an eye on. He is a monster. He is having a breakout start to this season and is very much the guy that you're going to have to kind of keep your eye on for them. He already has 3 sacks and 16 quarterback pressures through 3 games. They got other guys as well. CJ Fight, Prince Dorba are kind of the guys that I like highlighting. Different skill sets. Fight's more your defensive tackle type, Dorba and edge. They're going to come after you in a lot of ways. And then you continue to look at their front 7, and they have 2 awesome linebackers, Keyshawn Elliott, and then Jordan Crook, who is a guy that, Baylor recruited pretty heavily during his initial recruitment out of Duncanville. Those 2 guys have been great to start the year as well. And they're very good. They're proven commodities at the linebacker position. The thing that I think most stands out to me about Arizona State is they don't give up a lot on the ground. They're number 27 in run defense. I don't want to say that some of that is fraudulent, because they have played Mississippi State and Texas State, 2 pretty good offenses. I don't think they're a dominant run defense, but they certainly are very good. But the area where I think they are truly a problem is when it comes to pass rushing. They have 61 quarterback pressures as a team, 11 sacks, and 38 quarterback hurries. They've been getting it done, getting after quarterbacks heavily, and a lot of that is because they've been able to slow down teams from running the football.
Yeah, I mean, their front 7, I was looking through their the roster, and I don't know how many 6-year guys were back in their front 7 that had production. I don't know how they held on to some of those guys that could have gone to the NFL. I guess obviously NIL is part of that, but their experience up front. And you're not just going to go out there and beat them by confusing them. You're going to have to do things physically to move them if you want to run the ball. Now, you mentioned Mississippi State, not the greatest rushing team, but that's schematically they have the ability. And I was watching that before we started recording. Ironically, it kind of matches up with what Dave Aranda said. Struggling right now for Baylor in the inside zone, outside zone have had more success. If you go watch that tape from Mississippi State, their running backs both averaged right at 4 yards a carry. Blake Shapen's overall numbers, I guess he got sacked a few times in that game and pulled their overall average down. But the majority of their success came on the outside zone. and that type of scheme. Anything to the interior, Arizona State wasn't going to let them run on the front of the football. They had plenty of success. I say plenty, relative success to what they were doing on the outside. Had a few nice runs there. Baylor has to do something to get their run game going. And I don't want they can't go into this game with the expectation you're going to throw it 50 times again. I don't know what schematically they can change for this game, but you need to run the ball at least 30 times and feel pretty good about it in this game. And that was, Bryson Washington, Caden Knighton. I'm not skeptical. I'm nervous about the depth there in general. Bryson needs a big game off tackle, but Caden can be the guy that can have a big play off tackle as well. When I say off tackle, outside zone. I don't think they're just going to be. I don't necessarily think you're going to win the game in this area, but you have to keep that defensive backfield honest. And it's a good front. I mean, it's a really good front. They were really good last year. I mean, that was their driving force on their defense, was just stopping the run against the majority of the teams that they played. So this won't be easy. I'm curious how they adjust defensively to what Baylor does offensively throwing the football. And I want to see what. I don't think Jake Spavital saved anything. I don't think you can save anything for a game like this after you played Auburn and SMU, but I think there are wrinkles that you can go to based on how teams are already playing you. And I think that's what could determine Baylor's offensive success. It's what adjustments do we make that we haven't already shown for this particular game? And that's those changes don't help you later on the season, but Baylor needs to help right now. So if it's Sawyer running the football, if it's truly just changing up slightly what you're doing with your offensive line to gain leverage with your tight ends, I think we will see some changes like that to help against this front.
Right. QB run could be a part of that. More off tackle stuff could definitely be a part of that as well. I think maybe some changes with their screen game, going to that a little bit more to try to spread out the defense. They really tried to work on the halfback swing play against SMU and against Auburn, but they just didn't connect. Sawyer's been pretty off on that throw, specifically the throw to the running back, which you really, when you're throwing the ball to a running back, it's got to kind of be a perfect throw.
Especially the angle of the throw. Yeah.
Right. It's got to be a really good one. So that's an area that I'd like to see them attack if they can, because you can really spread some things out, which again, anything Baylor can do to spread out Arizona State's defensive line is going to be really important in this game. And so we'll see if they're able to do that. I will say this, though, Arizona State is great as a pass rushing unit, but Baylor's already faced two really big challenges in that regard. I mean, Auburn had Keldrick Falk and Kayron Crawford and Jared Smith. I mean, that is a bevy of NFL talent. But then you look at SMU. I mean, Cam Robertson and Isaiah Smith are really good. Yeah, they're really, really good as well. And so mixed results, right? Baylor was really bad against Auburn in that regard. I think there were like 22 pressures on Sawyer, 4 sacks. Like, they just couldn't really handle with that kind of talent. But then you look at the SMU game and they did a lot better. I think they only gave up like 6 or 7 pressures. So it was much, much better, much more efficient. They needed to be more like that performance, but a part of that's going to be the run game. So I've been kind of waiting on this, Colt, because the first 2 games, the Auburn and the SMU game, there wasn't success running the football. We know the Samford game, I had issues with how they ran the football in that game as well, even though the overall numbers look okay. I think this game really sets up to where if you can run against Arizona State, theoretically, you should be able to run against everyone else on your schedule.
Right. For sure.
Maybe Utah, you could say, maybe Utah's got a better run defense. We'll find out on that. But I think just in general, that's kind of how I'm feeling about this. And that's also why I'm like, man, if there was a week where Mason Miller can get this run game figured out for this offense and Jake Spavital as well, man, this would be the week. And I'm also curious if they make any changes up front, because it simply hasn't been good enough so far in this season.
Yeah. I mean, you look back through Arizona State's season last year and the beginning of this year, they haven't once given up over 200 yards. So take that off the table. I don't think that happens. But you look at the game at Cincinnati that they lost, and I believe that's the game, not speaking of their defense, but I believe Sam Levitt was out, that he didn't play in that game at Cincinnati. And that might be, he missed a game somewhere in there. But Cincinnati rushed for 191 yards at 5.03 yards per carry. And then you go down, the next best was UCF, rushed for 4.78 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, 177 yards. Kansas State rushed for 154, 6 points. So there's some precedent there that you can, but it's not consistent. Like, there is not this everybody's going to do it type deal. I mean, overall 3.68 yards per carry last year. This year through 3 games, so the sample sizes for this year are small. Mississippi State only rushed for 2.2 yards per carry, but Mississippi State last year was not like that. Was not they're building that offense right now, and it's not the greatest rushing team. Texas State's a decent rushing team and had 2.83 yards per carry. I just want to see Baylor commit, and I said this before, like, make them consider it. I don't care if you're averaging 3.5 yards per carry. If they're focused on taking that away, if it slows down their edge, and I think that might have been the difference between the Auburn game and the SMU game pass rush wise, was that Baylor ran the football effectively enough that those edges just couldn't just pin their ears back and go. Against Auburn, it seemed like pass play, it was just coming. They didn't run the ball consistently. They felt like they couldn't, I guess, and they didn't. So maybe Arizona State takes that same approach and says, you're not going to run the football on us. But that just seems like, you're kind of banking on Sawyer having another really bad game if you go that route. But if they do, more power to him. We'll just see if Sawyer can handle it. They need to run the ball consistently. Like it's not about every run has to be 5 yards. Like you need to bust a couple, but you just have to make them stay honest and help you open up your passing game. Michael Trigg, how healthy is he with his shoulder? He played against Samford, but I think he's an important piece of this because his versatility, you can't really just align with him and then make adjustments if he's motioning back into the play. So it announces some of your defensive strategy, but you're still committing a pretty good defensive back in most cases to cover him. So coming in and out of the box with him is important. They have to find a consistency with the run game. Like I said, it might be 35, 40 carries for 150 yards, but that's a good day in my mind. As well as you can throw the football, if you're getting that on the ground, you're going to have a pretty successful day.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they're up in the 150-yard kind of region, they're probably going to win this game. I would think, unless Sawyer just does not play well. But I would think that would be a recipe for success. Against Auburn, they ran for 64 yards, something like
they
that.
Just didn't commit to it at all. With some sacks played into that. Yeah, no, they couldn't at all. Yeah.
They couldn't run it. They had a couple explosive-ish type plays. The Bryson Washington speed option for 15 yards. He had another 10-yard run. Caden Knighton had a 10-yard run. And then, of course, Bryson Washington's big 50-yard run that got called back. But I would say in general, it's much more important for Baylor's offense to be able to get enough 4-yard carries, more so than getting a couple explosives and then a bunch of, no gains or 1-yard gain. So that's going to be a very important part of this, I think, going into this matchup. And the reason for it is because where Baylor should have success against Arizona State is in the pass game. So if you can make them have to at least think about the run, I think that is a big recipe for success for the Bears, because this has been the Achilles heel so far for Arizona State. They're 85th in the nation in passing defense, 99th in pass efficiency defense. You go through and look at, kind of how they played this year. I mean, Northern Arizona completed 62% of their passes for 242 yards and a touchdown. They moved it okay through the air. Blake Shapen at Mississippi State, he wasn't very accurate, only 57% completion percentage, but hit on the big plays. So 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a nice performance there. And then against Texas State, it kind of flipped. Texas State completed nearly 70% of their passes, but only 184 yards. So Arizona State did a good job of keeping those receivers in front of them. Baylor's going to challenge them in a very different way, I think, than all 3 of these offenses, though. I like Blake Shapen. He's not as good as Sawyer Robertson. I like Mississippi State's receivers. They're not as good nor as deep as Baylor's receivers. They don't have a Michael Trigg on their roster as well. I just think there's a lot of reasons to think that Baylor should be able to move the ball efficiently through the air against what is a pretty suspect, I would say, Arizona State secondary, especially since I believe they're going to miss Xavier Alford again for this game. I believe that's what Kenny Dillingham said.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that specifically. I knew that Boogie Wilson, who Baylor, I believe you can answer this better than I can, but Baylor was involved with him in his recruitment. But yeah, Arizona State last year, and I think a lot of this, they commit to stopping the run, and they do sacrifice some. And you look back to last year, such good rushing defense in terms of overall yards. And overall yards are just an indicator on how a team does in general, but 10th in the Big 12 in overall passing yards per game allowed last year. So if you just look at that isolated, not their best, but then you start going yards per attempt, they're better. QB rating defense, they're a little bit better. Top half of the Big 12 last year. But this year, I watched the Mississippi. I'm not watching the Texas State game from the vantage point of like they just don't. It's a mismatch. Like it is. Like if Baylor plays Texas State, I would expect and hope that Baylor could have similar type of results. Texas State might not be the best option, but it's a lower quality team. But I think Baylor, where they can take advantages, is setting their receivers up in ideal situations because of the depth. If you watch the Mississippi State game when Blake Shapen had his big touchdowns, they forced defensive backs to make decisions, and then they brought a guy across the middle of the field. And they didn't. I don't necessarily think they confused, but Blake did a good job of not staring down a receiver. And then he hit a guy. The game-winning touchdown pass was identical to one they had earlier. They had a single high safety. They had two corners, I guess a slot corner and a corner. I don't know what the exact alignment was. But the inside guy jumped the outside route, and the guy ran a post, and both times scored across the middle of the field. I'm not saying that is who Arizona State is as a passing defense, but I think that's you kind of, when you start seeing those things on film, then you know where to attack. And I love Baylor across the middle of the field. They have the ability to do both, but I really like Baylor across the middle of the field, especially when you start talking Michael Trigg as a slot receiver in a lot of instances. I'm curious how Jake Spavital attacks that secondary. If it's in situations like that, in a similar but not the same scheme as what Jeff Lebby runs there at Mississippi State, you start having those things pop up on tape. You have two things you can do. You're going to attack it that way until they prove they do, but then you have your immediate counter. If they are attacking it this way, then Sawyer knows where he's going with the football. That's a big advantage to Baylor. I mean, to Mississippi State and Texas State having played Arizona State already. You see those things on film. There's some reasons that they've had the reps, they've had this and this, but there are similar offenses that have attacked and have had somewhat reasonable success against Arizona State's passing defense. So I like Baylor's receivers in this matchup, but I'm going to like them for the majority of the season with whoever they're playing and with Sawyer Robertson. So it's just how effective can they be throughout the course of this game? And that's why I think it goes back to the run game. Like, be accountable in the run game, and your passing game is going to be there as well.
And they really have to attack certain matchups because Arizona State does have really good cornerback in Keith Abney II. He is a very good one. He's going to be the one that will probably be the most difficult to target, but whoever they have on besides him at the cornerback position, not been great. They have not had a lot of production there from the other cornerbacks on the roster. At the safety position, it looks like Xavier Alford is up in the air. Is what it's saying, what I can find online right now. So still up in the air after missing last week. Again, that doesn't probably bode very well to him playing at 100% for this game. But we'll see on that. Miles Rouser's a really good player. He's back. I like what he brings to the table. Adrian Wilson, you mentioned him. Overall, just a lot of guys haven't been great in coverage. And I think that's where you can kind of find some success in this matchup. Xavier Alford being back, if he is 100%, would be huge for them. He was a big-time recruit out of Texas. I mean, there's a lot of Texas kids on this Arizona State roster when you kind of look at it, and that's not awesome to see, but they've done a good job kind of building talent, and a lot of it's through the transfer portal. Most of these guys started somewhere else and then came to
as well.
State. And they found some guys. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think Sawyer Robertson's going to have a really good performance once again in this one. I don't think he's going to have to throw for 400 yards, but I think he's probably going to have to throw for 300 yards if they're going to win this game. And I think a lot of that's probably going to come down to, can Baylor win these one-on-one matchups with their receivers, which so far this year they've been able to do at a pretty high rate.
Yeah. And I'm curious after that Samford game, how did they get out of that? And what did they get out of that? And was that hey, we were really, truly just, and they'll never come out and say it, we were just focused on Arizona State. We thought we could come out, and they did against Samford and win the game without doing much because that offense was just off. Like, I hadn't seen that from them, and they spent so much in prep of Auburn and SMU. Not that they're overlooking at Samford, but I think there's something to that. I truly believe that. Now, Sawyer had to be better. Like, he made some bad decisions. He was inaccurate. But maybe there's some stuff that they just weren't really prepared for in that game that schematically threw him off, and it's very possible. So curious how to see how he bounces back from last week. But yeah, I mean, they're Arizona State's talent. I think the final thing on their defense is that they're going to be good. They have a lot of guys back last year from a really good defense. But that's not to say that they didn't have their spots where they struggled against good offenses. And that's where Baylor has to say, hey, we're a good offense and we can go out here and do these things. And if they can go out and run the ball and figure out how to run the ball in this game, then it opens up so much more. And we haven't seen that this year where you just felt, oh, we feel really good about the run game. And not that this is the get right spot, but if it is ultimately a spot where they can run the football and you feel good about it consistently, then it sets up the rest of it sets up the game, but then it sets up the rest of the season really well, because the ability to do both against a good rushing defense is massive. And we expected that from Baylor this year. We just haven't seen it so far for whatever reason that might be.
Yeah, that's kind of been the mix up there, is that we just haven't seen it, right? And I think for a lot of people coming into this game, a lot of this is going to be just about the trend of not winning these type of games. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, and I do think in a lot of ways it's a bad matchup, and then in a lot of ways it's a good matchup. And that's what makes this one tough. I mean, we were talking before the game, before recording, that Baylor's only a 2.5-point favorite right now at home. So it's very close. I mean, they view these teams as very nearly equal. It's fluctuated a little bit. I'll be honest, coming into the year, I thought Baylor would win the Auburn game and lose this game, was kind of how I kind of viewed the early part of the season. Now they have a chance to flip that. And if they do win this game and start 3-1, then I still think, my 10-2 record prediction is still somewhat intact. I don't know that I feel great about it, but still intact for the moment. If they lose this game, they're not going to go 10-2. So this is a big game, I think, for that to kind of hit its peak, and also a big game in regards to, can you make the Big 12 championship? I think this game is going to matter in that race potentially as we get close to the end. You obviously have them going 9-3. So 7-2 record, you would think that would be enough, but it might be a situation where you're tied with someone for second place in the Big 12.
There's 4 teams with 7-2 records, right? For the Big 12, and 2 of them got left out. So this is a big game. I mean, there's for that specific thing. And if you're playing this game on the road, but you had 7 other home games with this game being on the road, you feel differently, but you just have to win these games at home. And it sets a precedent for the final games of the year at home against Utah. But going on the road as well, like, you win the games that you're supposed to win at home, and then the chips fall where they do when you're on the road. You might lose one that you're not supposed to. You might win when you're not supposed to on the road, but you have to win these at home. And I feel comfortable with this matchup. I think the X factor is kind of Moss being, is he come back? And I mean, he did a pretty good job at Fresno. He's a deep shot guy for them. So like, if he comes back for this game, and maybe Dillingham's just saying that, like, we're going to make them prepare that he is playing to not tip our hand, but he's played 1-2 snaps this entire year, and he was hurt, and he has a foot injury. So it's like, how healthy is he going to really be? That could be the X factor for this defense, because if it's just Jordan Tyson out there, you kind of live, in my mind, with not letting him get the big explosive play he might get his otherwise, but keeping him in front of you, and then really dedicating some to the run. And to me, stopping the run enough and slowing down that offense enough, because they haven't been great offensively this year. Keep them in that range. Keep them from being really good this game, and you're going to give yourself the best chance to win.
It's also a massive game because Baylor's got a lot of really good recruits coming in for this one. This was kind of the game that they targeted this year because of the simple fact that the Auburn game was on a Friday night. Tough with Texas high school football. So now you have this game, another night game, another great opportunity. Lots of kids are going to be able to make it for this game as well. So that's another part of the equation as well. All right, Colt. So give me your prediction. Who do you got between Baylor and Arizona State? Currently, Baylor is a 2.5-point favorite going into this one.
Yeah, this one just feels so much like last year with TCU, in that it's like you lose at home to BYU, and it's just, it feels like they can't win it. And I think that you go in that TCU game was an evenly matched game. I don't know what that line ended up being. Different style of game, different anticipation for this game, but I feel like there's just something to getting over that hurdle again. They did it against TCU, and then you have a setback against Auburn. I think that there's something to that in this team playing and figuring out their footing at home, feeling comfortable at home. And I think this team is a good team. And so for that, I will take Baylor to win this one. The 2.5 line, I mean, that, like, you're either picking them to win or lose. I don't think there's anything that falls within, I don't think they're going to win by 1 point. So I'm indifferent on the over and under of 60.5. I just like Baylor to win this game at home, maybe by field goal. But that covers the 2.5 if we're going that direction. I think there's enough to this, and I think Sam Leavitt's overall struggles are he hasn't corrected them yet. And even if he plays better than he did, I don't know if that's going to be overall good enough if Baylor's truly committed to stopping the run in this game.
The amount of times that I feel like I've walked into McLean Stadium and then walked out, getting ready for this big game, excited about the game, excited to see Baylor, kind of put this product on the field that is, up to the standard that I think Dave Aranda wants it to be at. And then the amount of times that I've walked out of the stadium and just been like, what was that? Why was the result not what you talked about all week or all off season or all, what's going on here? It definitely makes you go into a game like this and go, man, I've seen this story before. I've picked this game and picked Baylor to win this game. And then it turns out, they lay an egg at home. And that's definitely something that is in the back of my mind. I just think that in this one, I'm going to go with the better quarterback, and I'm going to go with the team that's playing at home, and I'm going to let the chips fall as they may. I think it's going to be a really close and competitive game. It would not surprise me if Arizona State, frankly, came in to McLean Stadium and just beat up Baylor and won this game by like 2 scores.
That's their route to doing it. That's their route to doing it. Yeah,
it would not shock me based on what we've seen so far at all. It really wouldn't. Like, Baylor loses this game by 11, 10, 8 points. Would not shock me at all. I just think that this Baylor team has something in the past game that I don't think Arizona State really has an answer for. And if I'm right about that, then I think Baylor will dictate this game in a lot of ways on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know that I trust Baylor's defense at all, really. But I do think that I think they took some steps forward last week, and maybe that turnover production kind of continues to take a tick up. That's what Dave Aranda is expecting. We'll see on that. But I think at the end of the day, Baylor's passing attack, Sawyer Robertson at home, I think they live up to this game. And I think a big part of it is because they lost the Auburn game. I think they're going to be very much ready for this one. Get another chance at night, another chance in front of your fans, another chance to really recapture the momentum that your fan base and that your program had coming into the year. This is your chance. I mean, if you win this game, you're going to be ranked next week, probably. You should be ranked next week. Yeah. And your fan base is really going to be excited, I think, about the rest of this season. If you lose this game, it's probably going to be just another middle of the road season, most likely. And, it could fall off the rails even. We'll see kind of how that plays out. But I think that's what's at stake here. So I'm going to take Baylor to win this one. Again, pretty close game. I got them winning 34-28. So I think it's going to be a close one, highly competitive. And I think both these teams have clear advantages. And I just think one's going to take more advantage of those.
Yeah. And I think I'll obviously give my prediction already, but I think that Baylor has to sell out to stop the run. I think that when I say sell out, that might not be bringing 2 safeties down. Maybe you still play with deep safeties, but be aggressive in your schematic decisions of being proactive. So don't get beat because you're not tough and physical enough. Take it to them to avoid that. Maybe you give up a big play and maybe something happens, I did not feel this way against Auburn. I did not come out of the game thinking, Baylor should have done something differently. Baylor should have gone out and given up 400 passing yards because you can't cover anybody deep and you're bringing everybody down to the box. But in this game, it does not scare me the way that it did against Auburn and understanding how talented those receivers were. I think you sacrifice that. Maybe you give up a big play to Jordan Tyson. But if Arizona's going to say it's going to want to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball and then take a deep shot or do a dump pass to their tight end to get 8 yards. That is how they've operated this season. And truly, that's how they operated last season. They had Cam Scatterbo that made it even better with Jordan Tyson. And not that their running backs aren't good. Cam was just different. He was missing tackles. He was creating missed tackles for a guy that's 250 pounds or whatever he was. He wasn't that heavy. But
you could run against loaded boxes because he was just so physical. Yeah,
100%. And so I think you have to make Arizona State prove that we're going to come in and you're gonna be aggressive against the run, and we're gonna continue to run the ball, but we're also gonna connect down the field. Make them prove that, because at this point they haven't shown in 3 games that they can do that consistently. That's the only games. That's the game plan. Until they can prove otherwise, do that. Because even the Texas State game, Texas State's outmanned. UTSA rushed for 250 yards against Texas State's front. They held up relatively well considering. Baylor, they have to be in the same universe is that? Like, go out there and make them beat you. So that's my final thought. Like, Arizona State wants to run the ball. Take it away as much as you can. Make it hard on them, and then make them beat you down the field consistently. They haven't shown to this point that they can, and I think that's the recipe for winning this game. In a worst-case scenario, you get the ball back to your offense. And if something happens and it breaks down and they score, your offense has the ball back. And kind of, I mean, truthfully, like we saw against SMU, 2 big explosive plays, but it wore out that SMU defense. Now, you don't want busting coverage or a missed interception that leads to a touchdown. Those things are preventable. But if it comes with Jordan Tyson just beating you straight up because you dedicated time and effort to the run game, then you probably need to live with it.
Yep, I agree. They're going to have to take away the run to some extent. I don't think they're going to have to completely take it away, but if you want to win this game, you're going to have to keep them under 5 yards per carry. That's what Mississippi State did, and just
Here's
making
a question.
them
I know we're
efficient.
Yeah. How many snaps does Keaton Thomas play this week?
Hopefully, all of them.
Well, I love the idea of rotating guys. He's your best defensive player.
No. And I don't know that Phoenix is going to play in this game. And so I do not see how you take Keaton off the field. And then you can rotate Travion and Kylan. That's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe get Caleb Burns on there, even though I don't think this is the best matchup for him.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do. I don't think Keaton can come off the field, just like I don't think guys like Devin Bobby can come up. Tevin
DJ
Williams.
Coleman,
yeah, there's some guys that I just don't know that you can take them off the field. You know, if it's an automatic run situation, maybe you can bring in Kendrick to just, give DJ a break. But I think that there are certain guys that you can't take off the field. You're going to have to play Jackie Marshall and Cooper Lands a ton of snaps. I mean, you just are. And then rotate them with Devontae Tizino and Adonis. A lot of Amarian Wednesday. I just think Baylor just doesn't have the depth to just be rotating a bunch of guys, and not in this matchup. I know they tried it early in the year, but I don't know if it's something where you're not allowing guys to stay in the flow of a game. But I think that might be some of it that's been happening at linebacker because you've been rotating guys so much. I think that it might impact them a little bit. And so maybe just keeping a steady unit out there. Kylan and Travion can switch off a little bit, but Keaton's got to be on the field, man. I don't see how you take him out at this point.
Yeah, he has to. And I think getting those guys reps, and fortunately you're 2-1 and not 1-2. And that makes you feel a little bit better, but you're in conference play now. And you got those guys snaps. You got him reps. And now Keaton if he's your best, he needs to be playing 90% of the snaps. You don't want to go out and play 100 snaps like if it's starting to go that way, but he has to be on the field. This is not an interior defensive lineman who needs breaks that's physically battling every single play. Not that Keaton doesn't do that by any means, but there's just a difference. And he's your best player defensively right now. And I don't know if is it close? If Jackie's healthy, then maybe he's up there, but like he's been your guy and he can't come off the field in critical situations. I don't care what drive it is. Like, I don't care if this was a pre-scheduled deal. Get him on the field. And like, that's not, that's really hypercritical, but I just don't think that you can afford to do that in this game where you need a win at home to pull your best defensive player off to get reps for who? And we're beyond that now. You're going to win these games. You have to win these games now.
He didn't do that last year. I mean, he was on the field for almost every snap. Him and Matt Jones, just like they did not leave the field really. And so I'm with you. I don't know how you take him off because you just increase the odds of you're willing to say, oh, Keaton missed his gap and you gave up a touchdown. Okay. He's not going to do that very often. Yeah. Like, how reliable he is. The other guys, at this point, it's been weekly. It's been weekly that they've been giving up, missing their gap and giving up a huge running lane. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of validity in
play your best players.
Yep,
play your best players right now.
Yeah, let the chips fall as they may. It's definitely going to be a big part of this and play the best guys, which Aranda mentioned in his press conference. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. Colt and I will be back to give our best bets later tonight, I guess. And we will also be back next week to recap the Arizona State game. Be sure to check out the Sikkim 365 premium side. Colt and I both have articles that are coming up tomorrow. Or actually, Colt, yours came up yesterday. Mine will be up today. So be sure to check that out on Sikkim 365 premium. But thanks for listening today. This has been the Bearcast on Sikkim365.com.
Join Sikkim 365 Premium on a $1 for 1 month trial to read our experts' notes and insights. Know about high school commits, off-season transfers, coaching staff changes, and so much more before the rest. Also, download the Sikkim 365 app on your iPhone today to get instant notifications of breaking news, read up on the latest inside info, easily interact with other Baylor fans on our forums, and get alerts for anything published by your favorite staff members.